Haxie Mars-Belkin is here to talk us through the international front pages. And Hax, unsurprisingly, there is only one story which is dominating the British press, and that is, of course, the Brexit fallout and Boris Johnson's decision not to stand for Prime Minister.
Absolutely. British papers have certainly been having fun with this story. It's got everything: betrayal, lies, and of course power. My standout favourite has to be this front page from the Scottish paper, The National. They've used that iconic photo of then London Mayor Boris Johnson trapped on a zip wire, an image that's come to define him as a charismatic buffoon. Yes. And who's cutting him loose? Well, it's none other than Justice Secretary Michael Gove, of course, looming large in the background, ready to cut Boris free. The caption: "Bye-bye, Boris, what a mess you've left us."
That's it, The National with their fondness for Photoshop. The Sun as well, leaving us in no doubt as to what they see, how they see Boris's political future.
So they're using a huge picture of a forlorn Boris under the headline Brexecuted. The implication being that it was the Brexit campaign that propelled him to notoriety and the Brexit win that has brought about his downfall. At the top we read, "Gove knifes Boris." For the Sun, this is the end of Boris's career.
And more than a couple of papers have been making those parallels with the massively popular and has said quite bloody TV series Game of Thrones.
Very bloody indeed. The real Game of Thrones, concludes Free London Daily The Metro. We see Boris, Gove and Home Secretary Theresa May mocked up in the style of the often gruesome high drama series. Let's not forget that Theresa May too took more than a couple of swipes at Boris Johnson yesterday when she launched her prime ministerial bid. She implied that he was out of touch with ordinary people and that he treated the business of government as nothing more than a game.
Well, it's an act of midnight treachery, according to the Telegraph. That midnight referring to what exactly?
To the simple and quite astonishing fact that Michael Gove came out with his statement that Boris was unfit to be leader and that he was going to run for the job just hours before Boris was due to announce that he would be going for the top job. And at the top of this front page, you can see that the Telegraph describes it as the most spectacular political assassination in a generation. And the paper's cartoon today reflects that. Boris Johnson lying in a pool of his own blood, with Home Secretary Theresa May, Johnson and the three other candidates pointing their guns at, well, it's not entirely clear. The idea being, I imagine, that British politics has become something of a bloody free-for-all.
God, it's a bit Reservoir Dogs, isn't it? But what are the papers making of Johnson's last-minute U-turn? I mean, they can't be particularly pleased, can they?
There are a number of quite damning editorials doing the rounds, but this one from The Guardian by Marina Hind sums it up pretty well. Under the headline, "Boris won't clean up his own mess." She believes his withdrawal from the campaign, from the contest rather, was completely inevitable. She notes that Johnson's allies have been spending the last week briefing the press that his private polling shows he is, quote, "the only Tory leadership candidate with enough public support to ensure the Conservatives win at the next general election." Now, Marina Hyde says the fatal paradox of Boris is that while many see him as a charismatic politician, he's in fact sufficiently insecure and calculating to be running up private polling bills. In short, he wanted to win the campaign, but he has no idea about picking up the pieces.
And as for the person who's most likely then to succeed David Cameron,
Home Secretary Theresa May is, according to most polls, the standout favourite to replace Cameron. And the Daily Mail agrees. A party in flames and why it must be Theresa. The paper believes that the Conservative Party is tearing itself to pieces and that May is the steadying, calming influence that can calm the fever engulfing British politics and the Conservative Party at the moment.
It's interesting you mentioned Theresa May there. There's an article in The Times which is alleging some kind of dodgy deal between Boris Johnson and the Home Secretary.
Absolutely. This article claims that Boris Johnson offered to pull out of the race to become Prime Minister in return for an assurance from Theresa May that she would stand down before the 2020 election. The Home Secretary apparently rejected the idea out of hand and even rejected approaches for a face-to-face meeting with her rival. The paper is suggesting that these attempts by Boris to effects and political manoeuvring could be used by supporters of Michael Gove as they seek to justify his decision to usurp the man he promised to make Prime Minister.
Well, it's all very House of Cards, isn't it? Let's
just?
move away from the political infighting at Westminster. The question now turning to this, whether or not this Brexit will even happen.
Now, today is the day that Slovakia takes up the rotating EU presidency, and its foreign minister has used the opportunity to come out against Brexit. In this article in The Guardian, he says he would support any measure that would reverse the position of the British people, which we have to respect but also regret. And of course, Article 50, Britain's ticket out of the EU hasn't yet been used, it hasn't been enacted, meaning that for all the campaigning, political executions and economic turmoil, there is still a chance, a faint chance, but there is still a chance that Brexit may never even happen.
Goodness, what would we do if that came to pass? Thank you very much. Axel Marsbelkin with the International Press Review, Stephen Carroll with The Business, and I'm Hala Mohideen. Do stay with us here on France 24. Lots more still to come.